the three-day African Transformation Movement Policy Conference in KwaZulu-Natal. So the PAC, APC and Land Party offer messages of support. The four Pan-Africanist movements took a solidarity stance and pledged to engage towards a solidified effort to liberate South Africa. For more on the policy conference and the solidarity, we are now joined by ATM spokesperson Zama Ntshona. Zama, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. ATM, PAC, APC, and the Land Party, are you forming your own charter for South Africa? Multi-party charter of some sort.
Thank you so much. Good evening to you and the viewers. Well, this particular item was not one of the 10 discussion topics which were at conference, but the 1,521 members or delegates at conference, after the PAC, the APC, the Azapa and Land Party had offered a message of support, agreed in one accord as they were singing from Cape to Cairo. There needs to be a concerted, unified effort to actually deal with the issue of the derailment of the project that seeks to fight for the majority of black people who find themselves languishing in the outskirts of participation. As a result, there was a beautiful moment where all these leaders came together, holding hands and saying, we can at least be leaders that are committing to engage one another because we have something in common, and that is Pan-Africanism. And because of that, we ought to say what our forefathers had actually started, what they actually died for, when their blood was spilled on this earth and it nourished the tree of liberation. It had to be an undertaking that we agree as conference that it must be done with immediacy, because there is no way that a black child would be fully liberated, not until some of these political parties, if not all, are able to commit to this project of unification so that we are able to deal with the common enemy that we are faced with.
I know it's not part of the core points, and we're going to come to them. Well, we won't talk all 10, but at least we'll try and touch on some of the more critical ones. But is this a start of a much broader conversation that you might be having with these political parties towards 2024 in the context of coalition talks that are taking place in South Africa?
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. We are like-minded. We believe in the prioritization of the marginalized majority of this country. We're like-minded. We believe that it is important that we address, amongst other things, the land question. We are like-minded as we believe that it is going to be important that we find a decolonized South Africa from education to its economy. We are like-minded in a number of issues, and therefore it is not just a question of we might be embarking on this project, but it is a definite thing. We are going to be embarking on a project of engagement so that we see how we can best represent the majority of black people who are languishing in the outskirts of participation.
Right. Let's talk then about some of your key policies. Let's begin with the economic transformation policy. Many would have believed that the ATM, to an extent, would have been pretty much linked to the radical economic transformation faction of the ANC in terms of their policy rhetoric. How different is the document coming out of the conference from that?
Well, the African Transformation Movement, first, it is important that people take the African Transformation Movement as an independent party that it is. And its alignment must be on the basis of the value system of the African Transformation Movement. The African Transformation Movement is a peace movement. It is a movement that is based on the values of Ubuntu, transformation, servant leadership, and accountability. So whatever we do must find expression in the key value system of the African Transformation Movement. Now, as we are taking on the question of economy, can I just backtrack to education a little bit, as it is closely linked to the question of the economy? We believe that not until we deal with the challenges of the full value chain from early childhood development all the way up, we are not going to be able to find graduates that are going to be absorbed in the system. Let's take early childhood development. You have stats that reveal that 3 or 4 children between grade 1 and grade 4 are not able to read for meaning. And this is a problem because their counterparts, remember, the resources are limited, and therefore there is a contestation contestation for participation. But we are saying you are not going to be able to absorb as many children or give as many participants equal opportunity if this child can read for meaning, because this child would have to read this one chapter maybe 4 times just to understand. This is where now the decolonization concept comes in as far as education is concerned, because you find a child who, when interacting with a question or a problem or challenge, they have to first deal with the issue of the words that you find, which you must isolate to find meaning before you can construct a sentence, paragraph, or a chapter to extract meaning. Their counterparts, by the time they are reading this first chapter for the 4th time, they are on the 4th chapter and they cannot compete. Now, we are also moving on to say it is going to be important then that you deal with the issues of resourcing between public and private schools. It is about time that we take some of these subsidies that we are channeling towards private schools, we channel them towards the public schools. Research shows only 4% of the schools in South Africa actually are private. 96% are public schools. So if you're not going to give them a head start from the get-go, there is no way that you can think at a later stage that they will be the first ones to be absorbed by the economy of this country in dealing with the issues of joblessness.
What are your conventional terms? What are your conventional conditions that you are attaching to that? Because, do you seek to displace the subsidies that are being given to private school and rather turn those around to only be given to public schools, and particularly black schools of previously disadvantaged? What are your conventional conditions that you are attaching to your education policy?
We are saying, yes, you must not in any given stage when you are bringing transformation do an abrupt decision, a total 180 from funding to no funding. But there must be a flow that sticks there must be a flow and a change of direction which moves from the current allocations, but slowly but surely over a elongated period of time, be channeled towards the majority. Because at the end of the day, the majority that finds itself languishing in the outskirts of participation is the one tomorrow that will become a problem for this country. So in order for us to be able to deal with that, we must be able to be seen as people who are going to channel resources so that majority of the citizens are finding themselves in participating later on in the economy, but using education as a key vehicle for that.
Yeah. So how different is your position to that of the ANC? Because the ANC also believes in that gradual funneling down of resources, hence broad-based economic empowerment, to say eventually this will filter down to more and more marginalized and privileged disadvantaged groupings, as opposed to other more radical positions like those of the EF, say, not EFF, take the land, give it to government immediately and let government deal with that.
After 30 years at the helm of government, the point of departure is going to be urgency. As much as we speak to gradually moving from the current allocations, but you see that there is no unity of purpose, there is no political will, and there is not even intentions that are clearly articulated in how the government is functioning. Now, we are going to move with a bit of urgency because we see that if we would let things remain as they are, these will only remain as intentions, but never to be fulfilled. Yeah. Now, the African Transformation Movement is saying, even though you do not want immediacy to the point that you deprive the other whilst advantaging the other, but there must be a sense of urgency because our children are dying, our young people are despondent, and they are turning to outlets that are not going to assist this country. Sooner or later, we will not have a future. There must be a sense of urgency in being deliberate. In fact, disrupt the status quo so that we are able to move in a fashion and in a manner that is going to benefit our young people.
So we just come from the BRICS summit, talking of disrupting the status quo. What was the agreement on your international relations policy and where you are looking towards in terms of forming a multipolar kind of society, a meaningful one at that? Are you looking east? Are you looking west? Or are you a hybrid where you say we're not going to alienate our friends from the west, but we'll bring in our friends from the east?
Thank you so much. The African Transformation Movement is in full support of the BRICS platform. The African Transformation Movement, you would recall that we've gone on record saying, let us actually resign from the Rome Statute. We have actually gone on record saying we believe that we have no business in some of these treaties. In fact, President Zungula, in one of the engagements, went on to say it is going to be important for the African Transformation Movement, when in power, to re-look all the treaties that we have signed and see if they are still relevant, because we have seen how the West uses the likes of us to actually pursue certain agendas which are not of benefit to us nor of benefit to the global village. So the African Transformation Movement is in full support of BRICS. When it comes to the issue of the development bank that comes with BRICS, we are applauding. This is the direction that we should be taking moving forward. But we also looked at the Middle East conflict. As you would know, that the Balfour Declaration, which was signed in the absence of the Palestinian people, and actually sanctioned the project of the return, or the aliyah, the return of the Jewish people to a land that they had left for over 400 years. You remember also that Palestine was part of the Ottoman Turks Empire for 400 years. And when they came back into the country, they came back and actually displaced those who were there for more than 400 years. Now we're saying it is important first to understand, us being a peace movement, we are advocating for peace. We're advocating for a peaceful resolution to conflicts. But there are two important things. One, it is true what was raised by the United Nations, the League of Nations rather, that yes, the Jewish nation deserves to have a nation of its own. But if you look closely at the Balfour Declaration, it goes on to say, without displacing nor limiting the rights of the other to worship a God of choice. But now the implementation sees that from the early 1900s till 1948, when the Israeli state was established, till today, we have seen the Palestine occupation from 90% in the early 1900s to now being limited also only to the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Now we are saying it can't be. It is important that you allow the Palestinian people an opportunity to self-determinate. And if you are going to allow both to self-determinate, a two-state solution must be on the cards, so as to allow the other to determine his trajectory and growth in a manner that is consistent to his belief system and how they see fit, how they could actually move forward. So we're not only limited to that, but we also dealt with a number of issues, NATO, the IMF, and the other subject, because the global village is quite a big subject to tackle in just a small space of time. But we went as far as the policy is concerned. But primarily, peaceful solutions must be the ideal. But in the event that they are not able to find each other, we as the brothers and sisters in the global village, we must intervene and not allow a situation where they are going to kill each other in our presence.
Let's talk then a little bit about, are you going to leave the current constitution in existence, or are you talking about reworking the current constitution? And if so, how? What are the flaws in the current constitution as it stands?
Thank you so much. Well, the transformative agenda of the African transformation movement is not such that we do away with everything. Not everything is wrong. But there are things that we have seen over time that we believe that they need our special attention. One, the issue of the decolonization of the economy, of the education system, the issue of the telling of our story with a language that we know, with a narrative and a perspective that is best, not necessarily that is best, but through our eyes. Because those who became our colonizers, those who benefited from our cheap labor, those who stole our resources, and those who actually enslaved us, their narrative would be a narrative that seeks to always give them supremacy over those who were the natives of this country. So our approach would be to look into that. Maybe, for instance, the issue of African royalty, the kings and chiefs in our country, the role they play, how we take services to rural areas in lands where they govern, how the system that we have, which is a system of councillors, has seeks to displace a system that has been there for years, how working together in that space could actually work for our people. Decentralization of services, having some of these services readily available within the terrain that is actually ruled by kings and chiefs. These are some of the issues that we are raising that we believe would be very important if we are to look at the transformation agenda of the African transformation movement towards the betterment of society. Of course, the issues of economy. We know that there are those who, like in cases like the sunset clauses, have benefited more than the others. We believe that the sunset clauses would have worked better if you say this is a transition document. And it being a transition document, you need to have a timeline next to it. 5 years after democracy, then the return of certain percentage of the land would be actually a reality. 50 years into democracy, a gradual but an intentional program that shows that we are willing to transform society. So for us as the African Transformation Movement, not everything will be done away with, but we believe that the African agenda, the agenda of prioritizing the majority black people must find space and be very deliberate, clearly outlined in our constitution, and so is the implementation.
Yeah. It's common knowledge that the South African parastatals are in shambles. Eskom, you name it, the Transnet, you name the public railway, PRASA, and so on and so forth, the airlines, and so on and so forth. What is your big turnaround plan? These are complex operations.
Thank you so much. One, not under any circumstances should we privatize. We believe the day we start with the project of privatization, this is when the majority of the people of this country will find themselves languishing in the outskirts of participation. So privatization is not a solution for the African transformation movement. we believe that we can turn around the status quo. ESCOM, from 2019, when we entered the advocacy space, we had argued that it is going to be important that we, with the treaties that we have, carbon emissions, for instance, we are only emitting about 4%. Yes, we understand the green economy is important, and we need to play our part. But if you look at some of these first world countries that are banning coal, they are banning coal at levels unthinkable compared to South Africa. So we had asked that they must give us time to fix the problem, and we are going to go back into the project of the green economy. So what is readily available with us is coal. But in managing coal, let's make sure that all the companies that are delivering a subgrade or a standard grade of coal, there must be consequences for those. All those we have given tenders or projects to run in the building of the power stations, if they are not able to deliver on time, penalties must be given to such companies. The issue of using diesel as means to keep South Africa running as far as electricity is concerned, we say diesel must not be used. We are wasting a lot of money. And we are saying in issues such as plants that are being invaded by those who have ulterior motives, let's begin to see the defense force being deployed in such. The energy generation in this country is a necessary undertaking that should be prioritized. And if energy is disrupted, so is the economy of this country and the livelihoods of South Africans. Therefore, it is imperative that we see intervention. We believe that we do have capacity in this country. This is why it is going to be important at times, especially in critical areas, that we prioritize qualifications and competency before we look at issues such as cadre deployment, because we believe that we are where we are today because of those problems.
All right, that is Zama and Ntshona. Zana, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for speaking to us. They're outlining some of the policy position of the ATM.